Oh. Okay. So, I'm just gonna see if I can send out a link to this. You guys are seeing behind the scenes right now if anyone is watching yet. Although, why is this off? So, is this? Not sure if it's online yet. Because I'm not seeing any view information come in. Yeah, if anyone's watching, maybe just drop a comment to let me know if we are online. I think we are. I'm just gonna start going, I guess, and hopefully people want to join in and talk about things. I always like doing the live streams every now and then just to, talk to people back and forth in real time. It's tough in the comment section when you send a message and, people might see it like a few days later. You can't really... I'm getting an error message. Connect. I think we're okay. Okay, thanks, Cam. It's a little wonky about where it shows the chat, but sorry, it's always a little odd getting used to going live. It's a little bit different, but thanks for tuning in, Cam. I hope you're having a good day. So today I figured I'd just go through some of the latest headlines around Rocket Lab and then just talk to whoever feels like tuning in and whatever you guys want to talk about. I did have some people on Twitter asking about Planet Labs. We could even talk about that if anyone's interested or anything else. So, first of all, I guess the big headline we had just recently was SpaceX's now seeking a valuation of $175 billion in their next capital raise, which is pretty interesting because it was raised to $150 million like just this summer. So they are looking to raise... looks like $500 to $750 million. So, even though Starlink profitable now, or at least breaking even. Hey, Kevin, thanks for tuning in. Definitely appreciate it. Hope your day is going good. Yeah, so SpaceX obviously still raising money. Their expansion, very expensive. Obviously, Starship, getting it off the ground, extremely expensive. The biggest rocket, most ambitious project pretty much ever for, well, I suppose for the time you could say Apollo was more ambitious than Starship. Let me know what you think about that. But anyway, I guess what Rocket Lab investors think about from this is just, hey, Jackson, thanks for joining. Definitely appreciate it. So yeah, what 75 million? Well, that would be a big drop compared to what they are now, which is, over 2 billion. Maybe you mean, B. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, hey, Kev. So a lot of people are saying, well, Rocket Lab's number 2 in the space industry. SpaceX is number 1. If SpaceX says they're worth, hey, I'm just gonna call you Kang if that's all right, because I'm gonna mess up your first name. Thanks for tuning in from Korea. I definitely appreciate it. So yeah, a lot of people, for like Rocket Lab wise, are saying, well, if SpaceX is number one, they're now valuing themselves at 175 billion, which is, you know, quite a jump from just this summer. Surely Rocket Lab should be worth more than 2 billion. Whether some people said, oh, it should be a quarter. I saw one tweet saying it should be a half. I kind of tend to disagree with this line of thinking. Like, I understand why some people feel that way, and yes, it can't, I understand why, but I think really the valuation for every company should come back to like how much money they're making, how fast they're growing, and what they're doing. It shouldn't be, well, this company's number one, we're number two, therefore we should be at least X% of number two. Let me know how you guys feel about that. I mean, I think it does go to show the potential for growth and the size of the industry, the room to grow. So, you know, if Rocket Lab did grow to even a tenth of this valuation, that would be $17.5 billion. Good evening, Andreas. It must be pretty late over there in Sweden now, right? I would imagine we're probably looking at after midnight. Thanks for tuning in. Do appreciate it. So yeah, like I think, you know, one thing it does go to show is the room that there is to grow, and hopefully they can grow into, you know, maybe a higher percentage of SpaceX's value. And I do think they, right now at least, are in the number two position for launch commercially, and hopefully they can maintain that. There's some others coming, trying to fight for that spot. Obviously, you have Relativity, you have ULA, you have Firefly, some others. So we'll see what happens in the next few years. Should be exciting. Continuing on, obviously the next launch is coming up soon. I might try to live stream that one as well. Could be fun. Depends on the time though. So the launch window opens December 13th. I don't think that necessarily means they launch on the 13th, but you know, hopefully it does go off this time, because it's been delayed already, and I really want to see it launch. Starting to think now we're probably only looking at one launch for the rest of the year. I was previously hoping they would squeeze in two, but it seems like... hey, Jackson, with co-op at... That's good to hear. I heard some stuff about the Virgin Orbit facility. Like, they had all sorts of equipment there, like way too much stuff, and it wasn't really organized and stuff like that. I think it's a very large facility too, but it's always nice to hear, you know, insiders give their, you know, anecdotal experience, and I'm sure they did get a great deal on that facility as well. So yeah, definitely looking forward to this launch. First time caller. Hey, Judah. Will Rocket Lab become a transporter of fluids and propellant into a tanker / gas station? I mean, maybe, but I do think that is the kind of thing Starship may be best suited for. If you're talking about propellant, you probably want just the highest volume, most possible mass you can get up there at, you know, at any one time. Yeah, the Archimedes engine, I've heard they plan to... I've also heard rumors that Archimedes is maybe a little slow or being delayed, or it's the cause of most concern right now. I don't know how true that is. There were some posts on some different forums and stuff like that talking about that maybe being a possibility. Let me know, Jackson, if you've heard anything around Archimedes. Anyway, so this launch coming up, very much looking forward to it. Thinking maybe only one launch for the rest of the year. Still hoping for two, but maybe not. And then this post raised a little bit of eyebrows, I guess some people said, because we all know that the advertised numbers they originally said was that they're planning 22 launches for next year, maybe 11 for this year. And that would be a double. But this tweet said with plans to more than double launch cadence in 2024, people were wondering, well, does that mean there's not going to be that launch in for Rocket Lab, or does that mean they're adding another launch to 2024? So that was kind of the intrigue around this tweet. Vince brought that one up, actually. He's also a good channel to check out if you haven't already. I know they just did their Rocket Lab weekly probably a couple hours ago. I feel bad. I just kind of spontaneously said, you know, maybe I'll do a live stream today, and then I completely forgot. He does it at 5 every Saturday. So hopefully you guys aren't all Rocket Labbed out. But anyway, so that came out, and then we saw this deal. They're still working on transitioning the warehouse. Yeah, I think every time you hear some of these, you know, stories from someone who works at the company or whatever, you always have to take it with a grain of salt, especially if you know someone who knows someone. So, like, I don't doubt you, Jackson, but, like, you know, we're getting to a few degrees of separation here. Yeah, so this was exciting. They just recently announced a new deal to launch a South Korean satellite in the first half of 2024 on a rideshare mission. So it'll be multiple payloads on that mission. And yeah, Count, hey, I recognize you from the Discord, by the way. Yeah, so I don't believe I'm gonna get to that. I have that kind of on my list of things to cover, but it doesn't look like. Thanks, Johnny. Yeah, it doesn't look like Capella is moving any launches from Rocket Lab to SpaceX. They're just kind of adding some SpaceX launches. I have heard that their satellites, some of them at least, have deorbited a lot sooner than they expected. That might have something to do with why they need more launches, but I will be getting to that soon, actually. So anyway, yeah, this South Korean satellite will be launching 2024. So the question is now, are we talking about 23 launches in 2024 instead of 22, or is this just sharing with a NASA payload that was already going to launch anyway? Not too sure. Beck did say, though, that they are fully booked on their manifest for Electron next year. So really excited to hear that. I continue to be pretty happy with Electron. Thanks, Rocketeer, for joining, by the way. And yeah, everyone who's hanging out, definitely appreciate it. So yeah, that was good to hear. I continue to be very happy with the growth. I mean, how can you not be happy more than doubling from year to year? I know it was a little disappointing because of that anomaly. We didn't get our 15 launches this year, but still that growth next year is massive. So hopefully we'll see that in the stock price. You know, sometimes when the growth is so extreme, stocks really move, and Electron should be, you know, profitable, like very profitable at those levels. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have to admit, like, I'm not as much of an expert on Starship as some of the other channels, Jackson. But, I mean, they seem like they're making good progress. They seem like they've run into some delays from regulators and stuff like that. I wouldn't say the last mission was a failure. Let me know what you guys think, by the way. Can't see it going to the moon anytime soon. I mean, in terms of as a lunar lander, like, there's still definitely a long way to go for that. I don't think the timeline, like NASA was throwing around, like, any part of Artemis will be ready, unfortunately. I'm really looking forward to it, though. But yeah, I think you're right about that being delayed. So yeah, next, Capella Space, as Count was talking about. So they did announce that they will be partnering with SpaceX to launch 2 of their next generation satellites next year. This caused a lot of confusion among Rocket Lab people because we do have Capella launches on the manifest, and they have launched Capella before. So some people were pretty disappointed and wondering if, you know, some Electron launches were being canceled and remanifested over to a Falcon 9 rideshare. Yeah, well, yeah, that's the whole thing. Like it, so they should be able to hit 22 launch. They say anyway they can get that cadence next year for 22 launches. Um, so I have, it's not in my model, Mixed. I suppose it's always possible. I really think Electron is an extremely reliable vehicle outside of this one freak anomaly we had. I mean, let me know, you guys might disagree, but I feel like we should be getting to the point where it's just becoming like a reliable workhorse mode, kind of like a Falcon 9. You know, when's the last time anyone's talked about a Falcon 9 failing? It's, and yes, launch is only 1/3 of their revenue. It's still important though. You know, it's all important, and that is probably going to grow with Neutron. Anyway, so Capella, yeah, it was a little disappointing that they decided they're going to launch with SpaceX. And this goes into actually, by the way, 5 missions for Capella from Rocket Lab for their constellation. So, you know, this is just the Rocket Lab press release about that. So clearly like a pretty strong partnership with Capella, and then everyone was very disappointed with the SpaceX thing. So the interesting thing about that is it's this new SpaceX ride share, which they call bandwagon missions. And they'll be delivering payloads to inclinations of 45 degrees, altitudes of 550 to 605 kilometers. I'm not an expert on this stuff. I know there's a lot of people out there who probably know more than I do, so I try to figure it out as I go. But from what I understand, a decent number of Rocket Lab missions do go to this 45-degree inclination, similar to like Capella has gone. So that was a bit of a concern for Electron demand long term when SpaceX added this specific rideshare. We'll see how it goes, obviously. They've been flying these rideshares since 2021, but those have mostly gone to sun synchronous orbits, and they also offer traditional ride shares where small sats are flown as a secondary payload on other launches for like a large satellite, as opposed to a ride share with just tons of small satellites. So, any news with Varda? I haven't heard anything. Last I heard, they still wanted to, you know, come back to Australia because they couldn't get like FAA approval or something like that. It's been a long time. It kind of must be frustrating for them. But yeah, I haven't heard anything on that. Obviously, it doesn't affect Rocket Lab getting paid, but you know, it just goes to show there does seem to be a lot of bottlenecks around regulation in the industry that maybe they do need to be beefed up a little bit more. So anyway, as I was saying about this 45-degree inclination, Rocketeer. Yeah, the successful flight this week should do a lot. I think, by the way, just in terms of the technicals and the short-term moves, like I know I shouldn't make any predictions because if I say something wrong, you know, it will live on in recorded history. Someone will bring it up to me anytime I say anything. But I feel like, you know, we're on a decent run right now in terms of the short-term technicals, and I see it going like above 5 in the near future, especially if we have a successful launch. We'll have to see on that. Let me know what you guys think. But anyway, back to these inclinations. I was curious how many of these were like 45-degree, considering that is the new inclination of their SpaceX bandwagon rideshare. So I was looking through them, and there is like a decent number, right? So 2021 here, we have a 45-degree, 50-degree. I assume that's very close. 37, 42, 42. So there's some other ones. That's 97, 53, 94. 40, 70, 97, 98, 97.66. So actually less in 2022. There was more in 2021s with that inclination. 2023, 40.5, 44, 42. So that's several that seem to be in that ballpark. Some 32s, 99. Anyway, so I was just curious to that. It does seem like, you know, there might be some overlap. And if companies do have the option of going on a rideshare, it generally will be cheaper if it can get them where they need to go. So the question is, you know, how many launches out there cannot be served by a rideshare like that? And, you know, what does that market look like for the long term in the future? it'll take more than one to get confidence. I'm pretty confident already, to be honest. I feel like they've solved this issue. I feel like before, maybe I'm just overconfident, but I feel like this anomaly was such a freak issue, and it's a really reliable vehicle. But you know, maybe I'll be eating my words in a few weeks. Who knows? What does Peter think? What percent do you just assume will? I don't think their opinion is that like any failure rate is tolerable. Like, I think their goal and what they want to get to is like complete reliability, and you know, you don't just accept any failure rate. That was kind of the thing with Astra a while back. Oh, sorry, let me turn on this light here. I remember Astra was saying like, okay, we're just going to accept that we have a 95% success rate, meaning a 5% failure rate. And that was kind of shocking because it's like, if you're a satellite maker making like a, you know, $20 million satellite or something, you really want to drop it on a rocket, even if there's only a 5% chance of failure. That seems like, and they do have insurance, but even so, like they want their payload to get where it will go, and so they can operate their business. Any other big investments in your near future? Stocks, real estate, YouTube content? Yeah, so Jackson, where I live right now, I'm kind of like downtown, and I will be getting married next year. So there's like a decent chance in the not too distant future, I'll be moving out of downtown more, where there's more space and stuff like that. So that would be like a very big purchase for me. I don't have a ton of cash on hand right now. Instead of investing any money, I've, you know, been saving recently. I've kind of just been saving it as cash for the wedding, because investing in the short term, like I always find if you have a time horizon of like less than a year, you probably don't want to throw that in the market, because on that short time span, anything can happen. Like a 5 years plus, I think you're always going to do really well, but on that short time span. So just trying to save some cash right now. And unfortunately, it's frustrating to me because, like, you know, I really want to have more money to invest, but you know, life doesn't always cooperate. So, and my portfolio is, you know, I'm pretty proud of it already. So, hey Phil, thanks for tuning in from New Zealand. Must be, is it tomorrow over there? Oh, Teddy is also saying hi to you guys. I don't know if you can hear him downstairs, but sorry for that. So, scaling its solar panel. I think they're continuing to scale the solar panel business. Thanks, Jackson. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be stressful, and like, you know, I'm busy enough as it is, and you add like dealing with the upcoming wedding in there, like who knows how often I'll be able to make videos, and the day job and other hobbies and stuff like that. So, you know, it becomes tough to manage, but we'll see. Teddy is the GOAT, and he makes sure everybody knows it as often as possible. And I swear he's getting louder lately. He's just barking more and more. Anyway, so this story was a little bit of a nothing burger, if being honest, but, you know, some people threw it around, so I figured I'd bring it up. Basically, North Star is raising another $15 million for their debris tracking satellites, and they've been waiting because they were originally going to launch on Virgin Orbit, but Virgin Orbit, as we all know, sadly went out of business. So they pivoted to Rocket Lab for that launch. And then, of course, as soon as they pivot to Rocket Lab, what is supposed to be the most reliable vehicle in the small launch space, Rocket Lab has a failure and they have to wait again. So rough for this company. They're raising more money. They will launch with Rocket Lab eventually. But yeah, I think the headline made this sound more exciting than it really is. And debris tracking, though, very much an issue that I think should get more investment in the future, and like it's a very important issue for the space industry. Sunday 1 p.m. Wow, you're way ahead. Okay, yeah, it's like 7:30ish here, I believe. So in New Zealand, yeah. Okay, so there were several conferences coming up, and Teddy is once again chiming in. But the odd thing was, okay, so we had Deutsche Bank in November 15th. This is a little old, but I'm actually going to go through some clips from this one because I found it quite interesting. That we had Adam Spice there, CFO of Rocket Lab. Then there was this Morgan Stanley Space Summit, supposed to be December 5th. So that would have just passed, a few days ago. Usually you live in the future. I guess you do. Yeah, I'm stuck living in the past over here, Phil. Anyway, I could not find this Morgan Stanley Space Summit, like a webcast link anywhere. It doesn't appear to be on the Rocket Lab site. Couldn't find it on Morgan Stanley's site. So if anyone does come across it, sorry about that. If anyone does come across it, let me know because I would love to give it a listen. Always like to listen to both Adam and Peter. We do have Peter coming up very soon on December 15th, so I'll be watching out for that one. And if you guys are interested in hearing what he has to say, talking to more of the institutional investor side of things, you can give it a listen. Sometimes they ask questions that might not be as cool from like a tech point of view in terms of like, technology and big ideas and stuff, but they do try to often drill down into the numbers, which can be very important for valuing the company. So these conferences tend to be quite important as well, I feel. And yes, so this was the webcast. I will have to... Before we dive into this one, though, we had just a couple other things. This one I'm not going to go into myself, but if you want to check it out, you can do a quick search on YouTube, and I'm sure you'll find it. Colin from Investor Relations doing an interview with Opto talking about Rocket Lab. I don't think there's anything too exciting in this one. Probably worth a listen, but I'm not going to go through any clips with you today on that one. And then there was just a thing, a kind of spotlight video on Virginia and the growing spaceport there, which is obviously where Neutron is going to launch. You were watching that one right now, eh? Well, let me know if you heard anything interesting in it, because I haven't heard all of it. I meant to watch it, and I will. But I heard there's nothing that exciting. So I think someone on the Discord said that it might have been Yeti or one of the other guys. But I do tend to, I do want to listen to it at some point. You thought it was good, Terry? That's good to know. I'll definitely check it out then, maybe after this. So anyway, this spotlight on Virginia, just basically talking about the spaceport growing. The questions were spotty. That's too bad. Yeah, so anyway, they just had a few pictures of the site where I believe this is where we're going to have Neutron. So, work underway with that. Honestly, I do think the pad is probably a lower level concern for me than Archimedes and stuff like that. I mean, you have to obviously pave the ground and grading and foundations and all that stuff, and then tanks and what have you. But, I assume, seeing the ground get paved and all the rest is really less of a heavy lift than building a new engine out from scratch. And there has been a lot of discussion about Archimedes. Even Tim Ellis said something about it on a recent podcast. I was going to go into that maybe in a later video. But he basically said he thought they pivoted to Archimedes kind of the stage combustion cycle changing kind of late, and he thinks they're going to have some trouble and it might take a long time. So I figured that would be interesting to talk about in another video, and I'll look into it further. But yeah, Archimedes for me, my biggest concern about Neutron. Let me know if you guys have any other thoughts on that. And here's that pad once again. Oh my God, I don't know why I'm so tired here, guys. Sorry. So, a few highlights I thought I would go through from Adam Spice and the rest of the Deutsche Bank Global Summit. Talks about how they're going to handle the future space service. Did he give any details on that timeline, Johnny? Probably not, right? They're usually pretty vague. Yeah, that's true. I mean, sometimes I wonder if I'm a little too harsh on relativity, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we'll see what happens, you know? Maybe they will execute well with their Terran R, and they'll take the number 2 spot. Time will tell. That's exactly what I need to wake me up. I checked my fridge before doing this because I have a beer with you guys, whatever. But I am completely out, unfortunately. So this was interesting because we have all these executives from different companies, mostly focused on launch, in the same kind of panel interview. So kind of interesting to hear what they say, you know, about each other and fielding similar questions. It was more focused on launch than on the other side of things, but there were, I thought, some interesting snippets. So I'm going to jump to just a few different times and play you a few clips. Sometimes they don't like having these rebroadcasted, but I feel like it's okay if I'm only showing like a few clips and giving commentary on it as well. It's not like I'm just re-uploading the whole thing piecemeal. So there was a little bit here on the size of relativity space that I found interesting. Let me know if you can hear this, by the way, when I hit play here, and if it's too quiet. I think I should speed this up. So yeah, I guess what I found interesting was the number 1,100 people. Quite large. Like, that's a lot of money to be spending on a company that does not have any income and, you know, isn't going to have any income until, you know, maybe beyond 2026. Like, that's pretty rough. So yeah, I think they will have to raise. Ah, damn. You can't hear, eh? Why does this happen? I wonder. Because I can hear, and I'm capturing the audio. Let's try this. Anything there count or still nothing? Yeah. Desktop. Cannot hear. I can't actually edit this while I'm live either, so. Okay, pause this for a second. Nothing, eh? That's too bad. So I'm going to have to try and figure out the settings around this for the next one where we can hopefully listen and watch stuff together. Obviously, if I live stream a launch, it'll kind of suck if you guys can't see and hear. But basically, a few takeaways I had from this conference. So they were talking a lot about how obviously the demand for these telco constellations is massive, talking about, you know, Apple's emergency SOS feature that's coming, and then Amazon and Starlink and several others. And everyone's just so excited to be launching all these new telcos coming out, and really all 4 of them seem to be targeting them. So and they think, like, you know, the big market for the next several years at least is telco communications. And then a Firefly executive kind of said an interesting comment where he said, like, we don't believe in this one size fits all philosophy. And what I think he was kind of referring to there is where, you know, maybe I'm putting words into his mouth here, but I thought he was kind of talking about how, yeah, sound of silence. It's telling me to insert ads, but I'm not going to do that. browser audio. Yeah, you probably know more than I do, Count. Anyway, so he was kind of saying like he thinks it sounded like reading between the lines, SpaceX's strategy is like a one size fits all. They're going to focus on. Oh my god. I am sorry, guys. I don't know. It just hit me. So they're going to focus on a single rocket. Right now, obviously, it's Falcon 9 doing pretty much everything. And then once Starship becomes operational, like they'll probably try to do everything with that and kind of phase out Falcon 9 if they can get Starship as cheap as they think they can. And he kind of disagreed with that philosophy, saying he thinks we need diversity of launch and diversity of launch sizes, and that different payloads should go to different rockets, and the metric of cost per kilogram is really the wrong one to think about, and we shouldn't be throwing around this cost per kilogram number so much, because if your payload is a certain amount and it only fills up half the rocket you're launching, you're still paying for the full rocket. So anyway, he made some interesting points and kind of was saying like, we need different options, different sizes. And on this panel, we have a 1-ton rocket there with Firefly's Alpha. We have the 320 kilograms with Electron. We have 13-ton reusable with Neutron coming. Terran R, I think, is like 28 or 22 reusable, something like that. So yeah, and they do represent a good range, I think. So perhaps that could be promising for the industry in the future. And then of course Starship, like the massive beast. But I don't know if it would make sense for Starship launching like these small satellites on, like what would go on with some of these other rockets. We'll have to see on that. But that was the point he made, which I found was interesting. And what else did we hear? People were saying they found the pricing environment was kind of firming up lately. A lot of aspirational companies have kind of faded out, or I think they're probably referring to the Virgin Orbits and Astras of the world and stuff like that. So Spice was specifically, I guess, talking about their pricing was a bit firming up and getting better, which is good to hear, because we were seeing some launches on the lower end for Electron. I think earlier this year you'd see like 6.5 or something like that, whereas the target is 7.5 million. So that should help. And yeah, they think no one is lowering their prices. That's kind of what these guys said across the board. Some of them are like looking at raising their prices, or things are looking pretty firm for demand. And then the other thing that was interesting is, it wasn't back-to-back, but it was almost like a continuation of this little thing we have going on between Relativity and Rocket Lab, where Relativity, their CFO, made a point of saying, going on about their backlog and how high quality they are. And, maybe I need water or something. This is embarrassing. So kind of what Tim Ellis said recently, talking about how great their backlog is, where Peter Beck said it's like janky and not real and like not worth anything if the rocket isn't real. So he kind of reiterated his defense of Tim Ellis's stance and saying how they're very real contracts. And later on, Adam Spice said, when they were asked about like spending and costs, he said he thinks a lot of people underestimates the infrastructure costs and, basically the cost of running a vehicle if they haven't done it before. So maybe, I guess you could think of that as, well, Relativity hasn't operationally launched regularly. Maybe they're underestimating some of these costs that they are underbidding contracts on. So, I mean, we'll wait and see at that, but it's just, the difference in philosophy does continue. And maybe it makes sense for both companies, because Rocket Lab's kind of proved themselves with the Electron. Relativity had one almost successful launch. I mean, it was pretty successful, not completely successful. So maybe they do need the backlog, because for them, it's all about raising more capital through the private markets, through future funding rounds. That's all they really care about. So if they can point to this backlog and have a higher valuation for the next funding round and the next funding round. That's probably the main thing for them. But that also is kicking the can down the road, because once they're operational and they have to fulfill these contracts where they could be losing money on each one, at that point it becomes a problem. So I think that's what Peter kind of said, is they did a similar thing with Electron. They discounted it to get going, and those contracts were really like a weight around their neck, dragging them down. I think they had some discount pricing, like 4.5 million per launch when they originally came out, and it was really like some rough contracts for them. So we'll see, if Relativity changes their mind about that, but they're locked in with that big backlog. And to be fair, they have some pretty impressive customers. It's not all just like startups and people who haven't done anything before. So that's good for Relativity. Will Rocket Lab certify its new vehicle? Oh, yeah. Down the line, probably. So what they've said, Judah, is that they will make sure it's certifiable. They won't certify it right away because they don't think the market is there right now. Like right now, you can go to the ISS, and that's mostly it. So, it probably doesn't make sense for them to like deal with the whole capsule thing and certifying and all that. But if the market should shape up, and they'll have the option of certifying it and building that out, and that's probably like a longer term thing. They think they'll end up doing that eventually, just not immediately. Yeah, that's my big concern about Relativity, Matt, is like the global launch business is not that big. Like they were saying in this summit here, they were talking like 13 billion for all of launch, in terms of like revenue, the total addressable market, and Relativity is already valued over 4.2, and they'll need more funding rounds. And really, if you do more funding rounds, everyone wants to see the value go up each subsequent funding round to feel like good about their previous investment. So it becomes pretty difficult, I think. That's why Rocket Lab's doing these space systems and eventually applications. It's why a lot of people are not only doing launch, even SpaceX. Relativity and ULA are really the only ones I can think of who only do launch. So, ULA also in the 4 billion range, I believe. Launch can only take you so far. I think, most of us here, Rocket Lab investors, probably are hoping and planning for Rocket Lab to go well beyond that 4 billion valuation at some point. Have any of you guys added more shares over the past week or two? Curious to hear. I wanted to be honest, but as I said, like, yeah, I couldn't really, and I don't know. I do struggle with the weighting of the portfolio, like how much to put into it. Sometimes I want to put like half of my portfolio in it, and other times I think like, no, I should be safer. And then, the concentration, though, sometimes those guys can have like 100% plus years, which is really exciting. Yeah, well, the private markets have been better for most people than the public markets lately. Planet's another interesting one, by the way. I was very close to adding more shares, actually doubling my position, which is quite small. I'm not thrilled with the lack of growth lately, and from what I hear in the last earnings call, I still want to listen to that call, start to finish. I did hear they kind of reduced earnings guidance in the future as well. So I was kind of disappointed in that, but they do seem to be, internally still shooting for profitability via other methods, basically cuts, and, becoming more streamlined. Congrats, Cam, on your Rocket Lab. Yeah, and I still have a solid Tesla position as well, actually, guys, though I don't talk about it as much. AVAX. I don't know AVAX. About 145% in 60 days is insane. Like, well done. I don't know if that's just lucky or if you like planned that and timed that out, but if that's what you were expecting, then congratulations. Bought a few more at 442. Sold a couple. So selling puts is interesting. That's something I might do more of soon, especially when I'm feeling bullish and I don't have a ton of cash available. If the puts did get executed, I could always sell something if I had to. But I think I have never been put Rocket Lab when I've sold puts, and I've done it like 5 times, I think. So every time I've sold Rocket Lab puts, I just ended up, walking away with the cash. And usually it was small amounts, but I could do it bigger. Like I could go bigger on those puts. And I am feeling pretty good about the stock. Yeah, we'll see. To be honest, my portfolio has been a little bit boring lately. I haven't been making a ton of trades. I've just been kind of holding. So it's not as exciting to talk about with you guys, unfortunately. But I do love hearing about your trades. The carbon mapper is interesting. Do you guys think there's any danger in, like, I don't like to dive into politics, but let's say the Republicans win the next election in the US. They're a lot less climate change focused, and I know the carbon mapper, I think, is an amazing piece of technology. Sounds very interesting. But if they kind of pull the focus away from that, is that a risk for planet? I don't know. That's interesting, Kevin. To be honest, like I've cooled off on crypto. Like I was never crazy about crypto. I kind of dipped a toe into it, but nowadays I prefer stocks personally. Like I don't know. I can see the earnings of the company and kind of justify it, but I just find it very hard with crypto. Like, there's nothing underlying I can point to and be like, oh, the price to earnings is only this, or, the growth is like this or whatever. I just struggle with that because you're basically relying on greater adoption, I suppose. It could work out very well. But, yeah. Yeah, I do kind of wish I'd bought more Planet. I sent out a tweet a while back. I was like, okay, guys, I'm pretty sure Planet has bottomed. I'm putting it on the line and calling the bottom, and so far so good. Like I thought it might have dropped a little more after those earnings call, but didn't really. So yeah, it is a gamble. Well, I am disappointed I couldn't share the actual audio with you guys on this. I will have to try and get that figured out sometime. Another thing they kind of mentioned is they were asked how many launch companies they see existing long-term, and pretty much everyone agreed maybe 6 to 8 is what we're looking at least, outside of Europe, and then maybe there's a couple others in Europe. Any news on the Virginia launch site prep building? I haven't heard much. I keep trying to find, satellite images to see any kind of launch site progress. But as I said, right now, I'm actually more concerned with Archimedes than I am with the launch pad and the launch complex itself. So kind of keep an eye out to hear, any rumors about Archimedes. Let me know if you guys hear anything about that. It's mostly hearsay, but what about Satellogic? 520 average? Well, you can always bring it down if you want. But, I think you'll still, personally, I feel like you'll be fine in the long run. 5 years from now, whether it was 520, $5, 480, yes, it'll matter, but it may not be the end of the world. So my cost basis I brought down a little bit with a purchase maybe like 3 weeks ago, but it was just fairly small numbers, maybe 1,000 shares, maybe less. No, about 1,000 shares. So I should be a little below 450 now, I would think. I'll have to double check that. But yeah. And I would not sell covered calls on it. Did any of you consider selling any shares when we got close to 8? That's something I was curious about, because I'm very bullish on it long term, but there was like a 3-month period where the stock basically doubled. It went from 4 to almost 8, and at that point I almost considered selling like covered calls or something. I didn't, obviously. I kept all my shares, but yeah, curious. I think I've talked to some people who did sell at the highs and buy back in. We do seem to have a, a pretty solid base established around 420 or 404. So yeah, I guess we're all long-term holders here. It's probably the best way to go. Yeah, Jimmy, Palantir, very popular right now. I mean, obviously they've had a big move. And this is one thing I found interesting because I've been saying ever since I got into Rocket Lab is I feel like when they go become profitable is when they'll have the big move. And Palantir, I believe, recently became profitable and did have a big move. So, maybe that's no coincidence and there is something to it. My knowledge of Palantir is not that deep, unfortunately. I did hold it briefly when, I've said this before, but I used to go through a phase where I just kind of bought all sorts of things without knowing what I consider now to be enough about them. And anything I thought was interesting, I put a few bucks into, because back in 2021, I think everyone felt kind of rich. So I was a Palantir holder. I probably sold out too soon considering how high it's gone, but I mainly sold because I recognize I don't think I had the time to research them deeply enough to decide about them. But they're so popular. I mean, maybe I should consider it. Are any of you guys here Palantir holders? I know Vince is also big on Palantir, and I just see it everywhere all over Twitter nowadays. Seems like they're kind of the new Tesla in some ways. You were tempted, eh, Rocketeer? Yeah, it's hard to blame you. Having the stock go up and I don't have share stress. That's exactly if it doesn't drop back down and you can't get back in, and then you never get back in, that would drive me crazy. So I wouldn't want to risk that. I prefer just holding long term. I think just holding long term will build you enough value without risking trying to time it. There's even a very famous stat. I think this is actually true, and it's not just something people pass around. One of the investment funds checked what their highest performing accounts were to try and see what they could learn from those investors. And then they realized their highest performing accounts were from people that had died, and those accounts were still sitting there with those, companies being held, but they were no longer trading anything. So they were just holding long term, and it seems like people almost are their own enemy when they trade so much that, you can harm yourself more than create value. Palantir, yeah. Sold some for tax harvesting. Yeah, it's always, not a bad move, especially if you have those capital gains, if you want to offset them. I sold a few companies for tax harvesting purposes, but as I said, I think it was 2021 around so it was post-pandemic in the peak, and there's a lot of frenzy. I think I did make a few bad decisions back then, but everything had gone up so much and my Tesla had gone up so much. I guess I just felt rich and I can buy some of that. I can buy some of that. I can buy some of that. And that's exactly when I should have been the most disciplined, really. But, I live and learn. If you like AI, just buy Microsoft. Yeah. Google had that interesting announcement recently with their new AI. Yeah, Rocket Lab's not running out of ideas anytime soon. But AI just seems like the new buzzword, right? Every AI company has so much hype around it. Kind of a joke, I feel like, Elon just wants attention sometimes, and he's like, okay, everyone's paying attention to AI now I've got to start my own AI company too and have Grok. So, I don't know if there's any truth to that, but definitely everyone's going after it right now. So I do still hold some Microsoft though. Just I've had it for a very long time, and it's done well for me over the long run. Could it be a bubble? Yeah. I mean, I do think it will have real value and like drive productivity. So I don't know if it could be as much of a bubble as like say the .com bubble, where people were valuing all these websites based on, you know, nothing really. The thing is, Jimmy, you have no idea how much time I spent on that video. And I enjoyed doing it, and I was pretty happy with how it turned out, to be honest. So that one ended up performing about 7th out of my last 10 videos. So that means, you know, out of my last 10 videos, it got the 7th most views for that time frame. And I probably spent like at least 6 times more time on that video than like a regular video because of all that editing and stuff I had to do. So it's hard to justify it. If sometimes it's actually frustrating to me, guys, if I just you know, throw on a video, sit in front of the camera, talk whatever I happen to be thinking about at the time, if it's about Rocket Lab or something else, and then it does really well for whatever reason. Maybe it's an interesting topic, and then I have another video. I spend hours and hours and hours editing and trying to do all this cool stuff and like learning about editing because, you know, I find it kind of interesting. And then that video turns out like number 9 of 10, and the one where I don't do anything except sit here and talk is number 1 of 10. I'm like, oh, should I really be doing this? But I do appreciate that you liked it. I'm glad you said that because, you know, I felt like I worked pretty hard on that anyway. So I'll try to do some more in the future when I can, but finding footage and cutting it up and having transitions and sometimes background music and stuff like that, it takes a ton of time, at least for me. I think I'm probably going to call this a stream pretty soon, guys. I will probably just watch the rest of the hockey game for the night. If you have any final questions or things you want to talk about, let me know now. Otherwise, see, I should have brought a beer. If I'd brought a beer, it would have been good to hang out with you guys longer. Thanks. Yeah, I do appreciate that, Terry. Is there any other takeaways? Oh yeah, one other thing I found interesting from this summit was the Firefly guy. They have a 1-ton vehicle, which is obviously like 3 times larger than Electron. And he said reusability for a vehicle of their small size doesn't really make sense. And then, you know, he's sitting next to Adam Spice, who has a vehicle 1/3 the size and is reusable. And I was like, someone's wrong here, you know. This doesn't line up. Like, what's... So yeah, I just found that kind of interesting. Personally, I do think Electron reusability is worthwhile. Yeah. Yeah, thanks Rocketeer, thanks Cam, Kevin, everyone who's come to hang out. I do appreciate it. Don't do these live streams all that often, but yeah, if I went live and no one came by to talk, I'd be pretty boring. So yeah, thanks Kevin, and also Kevin. See you everyone. I hope you have a good night, or if you happen to be in New Zealand, a good afternoon. Talk to you guys in the next video. Bye for now.